Do you want to build your chest? If so, you're going to love these 3 exercises. Most people live on a steady diet of flat bench, dumbbell, incline bench, decline bench, and wonder, hey, how come my chest isn't actually growing? So in one part is going to be how you execute exercises, but another part is going to be exercise execution. Now, before we jump into these specific exercises, one of the most important components if you actually want to build a powerful chest is to leave your ego at the door. And I know that's incredibly difficult, especially if you love to do things like a barbell bench press. Man, I grew up in a weight room, grew up playing football, so like how many times can you do 225? All that stuff is a big deal. But the way that most people bench press is not going to be the best way to actually build their chest. And specifically, if you're always chasing a barbell bench press as the best way to try to build your chest, there's a good chance your ego's getting in the way. You're probably going really fast through eccentrics, might be bouncing off your chest, and by extension, making the barbell bench press an exercise that's going to be a little bit more biased towards your anterior delt and your tricep. So with that said, let me show you 3 different exercises you can incorporate now to start building your chest more effectively. First exercise, a single arm incline bench press. Now with the incline bench press, I'm set at between 15 and 30 degrees. And so kind of 1 or 2 notches on most incline benches. This angle has been shown based on EMG studies to actually be the best way to recruit your chest. If you get too high, you start going 45 or 65 or 75 plus degrees with an incline bench press, then the anterior delt tends to take over. Same thing, if you go a little bit more flat, we don't get as good of chest fiber recruitment. So if we pick an angle, again, between 15 and 30 degrees, and you can apply this to any bench press, it's gonna be even better for engaging your chest. But what I like to do is actually a single arm dumbbell bench press, because if you look at most lifters, they have an issue with one shoulder or the other. And so what happens is they start shortening their range of motion, never really get past this 90-degree point, and because they're never putting their chest under a big stretch, they're not maximizing the contractile ability of the pecs when it comes to the end of the range of motion. And so if you think about it, if you're only coming in here on most bench presses, this is primarily going to be tricep dominant. And so when you do a single arm bench press, we can train around muscular imbalances and we can get a greater range of motion than what most people will do individually. Now, when I'm doing this exercise, a couple things. I like to take my opposite arm and clench it over here. This creates more stability. Also, drive your heels into the ground the entire way. If you are not tight, I've seen people just about corkscrew off of the bench. And so right here, again, good full range of motion, elbows tucked at about 45 degrees. The weight is actually hitting the top of my shoulder on the eccentric on each and every single rep. Now you might be thinking, why do a single arm variation? Well, one, as I previously mentioned, we can train around some imbalances. Number 2, we can get a greater range of motion. Most people can when they're focused on that. The one trade-off I would say is when we are inherently doing something with less stability, force output can be a little bit less, meaning you might not be able to generate as much force directly through your chest if you have a weak link in your core. That said, I get strong as shit on these, right? Like I have some of my clients who are bench pressing 100 pounds in each hand, doing a single arm press like that, and you're gonna have an incredibly strong, resilient core in conjunction with also building up your chest. So weave these in. They don't have to be your main exercise, but it's gonna be a great way to train around some muscular imbalances you might already be having. Exercise number 2, the costal cable chest press. I picked this one up from my good man, Blake West, phenomenal coach, my personal coach. And this is a great way to really attach the costal fibers, kind of lower pec region, and bias the chest press a little bit differently. And so what we do is we actually set the functional trainer with the handles up high. And as you're gonna see with this press, I'll be slightly staggered forward, and that line of pull directly with that cable is gonna be along the same line of pull directly with the press. The reason I like this exercise, especially as somebody who's done a ton of barbell and dumbbell bench pressing over the years, with the cables, we have the ability to have a consistent resistance profile all the way through. And what I find for so many people, when we have ideal resistance all the way through that range, we can really start to feel a pecs engaged. Again, if you can't feel a muscle contract, you only feel your shoulders and your triceps, you're gonna have one hell of a time making your chest actually grow. So in this particular exercise, I'm not gonna load them up super heavy, but I'm gonna get staggered out here, a slight forward lean, and then when I come through with the press, again, I'm not cranking my hands together, I'm imagining that my nipples are squeezing together. Kind of a goofy cue, but it works, right? And so big stretch all the way through. And right here, squeezing the pecs as hard as possible. And so I like these. I mean, you can program them pretty heavy if you want. I will rotate through using heavy sets of 6 to 8, even 10, and occasionally go in 12, 15, even 20 reps in a set, depending on what I'm looking to do specifically. Now, I really prefer this to a cable fly. Most people really struggle in that externally rotated position. When it comes to doing a fly, they start to get really sore, really right in here between that tie-in between the pec and that anterior shoulder. And so, and we've seen this in studies as well, is even without doing that full fly motion, just having handles out slightly wider and getting some of that adduction type movement where you're bringing our hands together can still be a great replacement for something like a fly, but it's gonna be more shoulder friendly. So the costal cable chest press, a great exercise, not necessarily for your primary exercise of the day. You're not going to get the most progressive tension overload like you would with a dumbbell press, but maybe a second or third focused exercise directly within. I find this to be a great replacement for something like a pec fly. It can be less torque directly on the shoulder, and it's going to really help you fire up that chest a bit more effectively. The third exercise here is a converging ring push-up. Now, when we use rings, we could use TRX. Really, any suspension trainer is going to work pretty well for something like this. But what this lets us do, first we have an increased stability demand, which is going to be great for most people who lack optimal shoulder stability and run into shoulder issues. But with the rings, what we can do is we can actually have a converging range of motion. Again, similar to what we would do on a fly. And so what we don't want to do is smash the hands together, but we want to come through, have constant tension, and squeeze the pecs, ideally through that range of motion. Now, when it comes to this exercise, normally I'm flipped the other way inside of the squat rack, but we're just gonna do it this way for demonstration purposes. And so when I'm coming through and doing a press, control, and then I'm keeping tension all the way through the range, right? Again, I'm not crashing the hands together. I'm imagining I'm squeezing my pecs together on each rep. Now, a couple times that you can do a converging ring push-up. Number one, you could do this actually as a first exercise of the day, but you're going to want to keep the reps a little bit higher. The stability advantage of having something like a ring or a TRX, any suspension training attachment, is going to require more stabilization for all the stabilizers through the rotator cuff, so on and so forth. So if you want to be able to improve some of that stabilization and really feel your pecs contract, this can be a great exercise before you jump into something heavier. In addition, this can also be a great exercise towards the end of a training session. You can elevate your feet, you can hit reps that are going to be a little bit harder if you're using something like a vest where you're 5, 6, 8, 10 rep sets, or you can bump them up a little bit higher like I like to do and go 3 sets of 20 to 25. And understanding that we're taking tempo on these. So these sets are taking sometimes over a minute, right? So there you have it. 3 simple exercises you can take and you can apply directly to your training now. The single arm incline dumbbell bench press, ideally with an angle 15 to 30 degrees, is going to be optimal. Number 2, the costal cable chest press. It's a great alternative to a dumbbell pec fly. You're gonna have a lot better resistance profile, and you're gonna really train those or bias towards those costal fibers directly of your chest. Not sure what I'm doing right here, but we're gonna keep it in. And then number 3, we are gonna have the converging ring push-up, which is a great exercise both to enhance stability, but also really tear the pecs up at the end of a workout. Either way, adding these 3 in, getting a little bit different training stimulus than just living and dying by the barbell and dumbbell bench press is going to be a great way not only to build your chest, but also ensure optimal shoulder health over time. If you have specific questions on how to incorporate these exercises into a workout, into the workout that you're currently doing, just drop them in the comments below and I'll make sure I get you some clarity. Also, I want to make sure that you understand this key idea. These are not just the only chest exercises that we do. We always keep the staples. We always keep things that are going to be effective, like a low incline dumbbell bench press, different bench press variations. But if you're struggling with feeling your chest actually fire up, so adding exercises like this can be the best thing that you need to do to maximize the results that you're getting in the gym. And as we always like to say, look great naked without living in the gym. All right, I'll catch you on the next one.